for talking to meters and stuff. So part of their secret sauce is that they have their own IP protocol that ultimately is just talking, SCADA to a meter on the backside. Yeah, and yeah, just sort of where adoption's at right now, and it's growing a lot. But obviously, California has Pacific Gas and Electric, who's not a customer of ours, so I can name them, has done a lot in this space. There's a lot of that going on. There's basically the way the stimulus money laid out. They identified utilities in sort of each quadrant of the U.S. and different utilities try to kind of disperse that money, equally. So there's little pockets where this stuff's moving really fast, and there's other pockets where it's slow adoption. And actually on here you can see actually AMR versus AMI somewhat on here. So yeah, you'll see a lot more of that. Yeah.
So ultimately, what we're doing is that we've given some means to join that network to every one of these devices, right? So when you're talking about, say, meters, right, then you've given that device and stuck it on somebody's house. Now, there's lots of ways that you can try to put controls around that, but at the end of the day, you've given them the tech that needs to do it, right? So I can, if you're not worried about, say, the law, right, and you just go down to an abandoned building and snap off the meter off the side of it and take it home and reverse it, well, what are you going to do about that, right? So signing, PKI, all of those types of things and types of controls that are good things that we talk about and we pat ourselves on the back for, with any sort of determined attacker and physical access, you're going to get it.
Yeah, and the larger point we usually make around that is that that's why monitoring capabilities are so important. And we mentioned C1219, and these SCADA protocols they're massive, like gigantic. Like you can pay NIST or whatever, $200 for this, this whole reference set of all the commands and things. So there's all kinds of monitoring and logging capabilities that would, detect tampering. We found that in many cases, like none of that stuff was on by default in vendor firmware. So all of these test cases, and I know Jonathan Pollitt did a talk on meter tampering. I was unfortunately working on slides, so I did not see that, but and I've talked with him about it, over email and things. I mean, there's a lot of very obvious things that you can do to meters that will allow you to, to tamper with the device and impair their ability to disconnect your service, modify the data that the utility is seeing back, and all of that, and essentially interact with the network. Yeah, see also, Mike Davis's stuff from last year and Travis Goodspeed's numerous things on Zigbee and physical access devices and doing key extraction and voltage glitching and all that. So, there's essentially at the end of the day, you have access to that device. Yeah.
Kind of one of the other overall points that kind of always gets made. If you parallel some of these things that they're trying to do with, say, the DRM industry, and think about like satellite. Think about content protection, like current stuff with Blu-ray or any of those types of things. Or say like Microsoft on the Xbox or Sony, PlayStation, that kind of thing. These guys have been doing that for what? 20 years yet? Something, a long time, yeah. Right? And this is what they do all the time around the clock. And they can't get it, right? That eventually those protections will fall. That's a really, really high bar, right? And so to expect or to assume that someone that's designing this that maybe hasn't had that level of experience in protecting something that you've then given to someone and expected them to not be able to break it apart and open that back up, it's a very difficult thing to accomplish.
Yeah, and we typically haven't seen even some of the hardware protections that you see on other like consumer devices as far as like fuses and fuses for JTAGs and any other kind of hardware controls around a lot of this stuff. Like that, it just hasn't really occurred to people. And the thing that we like consistently will get is, well, that's really hard. That'll take like somebody a really long time to do it. And to make the satellite hacking sort of analogy to that, if any of you have does anybody have a Dreambox, or I don't even know if those work anymore. Like I just said screw it and got cable, but the deal with that stuff is that you don't necessarily have to be able to break, the particular codes for, for a satellite card yourself. You just have to wait for one person to do it and then share that information everywhere. So, same applies to the meter stuff. You've got these devices that are out there for 15 years, expected lifetime, that are very difficult to push updates to. And, when you identify something like that one time and, post that out on some equivalent of, DVS forum or whatever and share that information, then everybody's going to have access to it. Yeah. And we've hit on some of that. We run into a lot of stuff where we'll hear basically the proprietary element of their technology or the secret stuff they do as being something that is a selling point for the security of their devices. There's a lot of stuff like that we see in both in marketing stuff and also just like in the devices themselves. There's a lot of cynicism about essentially what hackers can do and how determined they would be. It's really hard to when you think about like we mentioned the Xbox and SAT stuff. I don't think that anybody really would have expected that somebody would have identified two ICs that you could solder on some board on a PS2 to make it do turn it into a toaster or whatever it is. But somebody figured it out eventually. So that's really like the larger point we make about all these devices is just just sort of work under the assumption that they're compromised, and then how do you design your network towards that, Yeah, and we already hit on that. So
yeah, and to the point about most of these vendors, or at least some of the larger vendors that have been around or more established, even the people within them that are doing this stuff. Are new to all of this, right? They're new to this InfoSec world. That's not established yet for them. So they're not, they don't have a Microsoft cert, right, that is accustomed to dealing with people that find vulnerabilities in their products and have a oiled machine to ensure that stuff gets fixed and gets pushed out in a timely fashion.
Right, and it's very much like what we used to encounter, if you've, in the 90s and stuff like that, you'd find a bug on somebody's website and you would call them. I gave up, a long time ago even trying that, but, in the 90s or something, you'd spot something like that, and you'd send an email, to the company or call somebody up and say, look, you've got, I've got command execution on your website, I'm calling you to help you, fix it, and they would just yell at you, what the hell is wrong with you? How dare you, do this? And it's a lot of that same kind of mentality, and, very much we found in dealing with vendors that we had to almost find, our moles inside the organization that did get it, that would kind of feed us good information.
And finally get the right person on the phone, and they'll get it, and then they'll fight your battle internally. Yeah,
you'd send an email about wanting to know like one minor question about sort of how they do, signing of messages or something, and somebody would send you a meeting request, and then you'd call into the call, and it would be the chief counsel for the company instead of the engineering team. That's kind of how they roll. So
some of the stuff that we've looked at, you have multiple types of devices here, right? You've got ones that really are all just one prepackaged device that you buy it that way. But several vendors have big selling points on that they're very modular, right? That the meter can fit with multiple different types of things, right? Or different types of network cards, for example. Or say, in some cases, what we're seeing is that it's all just ways to interface with some sort of a standardized interface, like serial, right? So there'll be all these different types of products that will let you hook into your existing infrastructure and then just do magical things with it over the air, right? So, well, yeah.
Yeah, and actually, if you go back far enough through like the vendors that have been in this space for a while, like they'll refer to these things as modems a lot. And if you get like the engineering guys on the phone, they'll call it a modem, and that's because really under the hood, in a lot of cases, the actual guts of what's really going on here is just just serial communication that then may or may not be getting encapsulated over some kind of other transport and sent over the air, but it really is a modem, and if you can find the right ports to connect to, maybe they're not soldered on the board, or in a lot of cases, and like I mentioned, the modular stuff, which we shall not name, has a 10-pin plug that you just literally can talk serial to this device, and you know,